too. Congratulations, Riley. Keep up the good work. Our first speaker comes to us from Baton Rouge. He oversees the Louisiana High School Athletic Association, which will stage the Select School State Championship football games this Friday in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Starts at 10 a.m., so come early and stay late. He previously served in the same capacity for the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association. Big weekend to come. He'll be spending a lot of time in New Orleans. It's great to have him here today. Please give a very warm Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation Quarterback Club welcome to Eddie Bonine, the Executive Director of the LHSAA. Eddie?
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you. Ken, thank you for inviting me. Thanks to the Greater New Orleans Quarterback Club and the Association for having me here today. I see some friendly faces in the room that I've got to know around the last year and a half or so that I've been your executive director. And it's good seeing you again. And of course, Jim Rabinick, thank you so much for what you do with the LHSAA and what you do for athletes across the state of Louisiana. Congratulations to Coach for the opportunity to participate. We have a weekend of football, 2 weekends of football, but one starting this weekend. We have some newcomers to the Dome. We have a couple that have been there before. But for overall, it's really a great opportunity for the athletes, the families, the parents, the community, and all that are surrounding the schools to get an opportunity to play on the floor of the Mercedes Superdome. At this point, I would be remiss if I didn't publicly thank the Sugar Bowl and for all they do for the LHSAA and the partnership we have with them. We could not do what we do in the venues that we do them in without the Sugar Bowl, and anybody that's in here from Allstate, the Allstate Insurance Group, the Allstate Sugar Bowl do incredible things for us and what we're able to accomplish when it comes to our championships. I can't believe it's been a year since I stood here before. All of you, it's already been a year, and here we are again. And as if you follow the LHSAA, it's been quite the roller coaster over the course of the last year. I stood here before you last year discussing some plans that we had and what we needed to hopefully accomplish and do what we needed to do to move the organization in a forward position. And since then, some of those things came to fruition, some of those did not. And we are in a position now where we now have the select and non-select, and not only football, but also now boys and girls basketball, baseball, softball. And at this point, we have worked diligently to take the plan that was given to us as staff of the LHSAA to ensure that those championships remain the quality that we've had in the past when it comes to the experience of those cities in which we travel to, and those cities that have worked diligently with us to expand the formats and to expand the hospitality that is necessary for us to have all the events that we have now and the amount of teams that we're bringing to those state championship venues. It's been a work in progress as we move forward with the organization and attempting to do what we can to ensure that our focus, and I say our meaning not the staff but also myself, is our focus is on the student athletes. We've been able to work through some difficulties with officials, got it resolved, we're ready to go. We've had some positive movement in the right direction in a lot of different directions that we've gone. But I want to tell all of you here today that we are always focusing on the student athlete. And that is what I've stood on since I come into the state of Louisiana, and will continue to stand on the fact that we are working diligently to ensure that it is a competitive field for those who participate, and that the rules are being applied equitably across our state, and that we are in this business for the student athletes to ensure that their 4 years that they participate in high school athletics is years that they'll look back as being appreciative, but also understanding the experience that they had that allowed them to grow as students, but also preparing them for what it entails them after, if they're fortunate enough to play at the next level, or just becoming citizens and moving forward with their higher education. An update, for all of those that were damaged and had suffered through the flood, and there's many of you here. In fact, I don't think I've met anybody since the flood that doesn't have a family member or knows somebody that has a family member that was touched by that flood. We did not escape that as well with our property at 12720 Old Hammond Highway. We had approximately 2 feet of water throughout the building, damaged everything in there. We had some contamination and some local areas where sewage had broken loose. So we had to tear and gut everything out of the building. For those who have been there, it's an unbelievable facility. And we are probably about 90 days away now of being able to move back in there. Very fortunate to have a corporate partner, I'm going to call them partners at this point, GMFS, which is a company, mortgage company, and insurance company in the greater, well, around the state, but based out of Baton Rouge, opened up their doors to us for a temporary facility. And they did such graciously in regards to not having us incur any costs while we're there. So it's an incredible giving of them, and that will not be forgotten at all. In fact, we're going to do a presentation for them at halftime at one of the state championship games at the Dome. But we're about 90 days from getting back into the facility, and we've had some inconveniences for the member schools in regards to landline telephones. We were working as diligently as we can with cell phone service only, email communication, which for some has forced them to break into that bridge of using email and communicating. But for the most part now, I think it's been pretty successful, and we're ready to actually get back into the old facility, but new digs, if you will, with that we had gone in and had to completely redo that, and including having to refurnish the building. We just finished up the second viewing or reading of reclassification, districting, and classification for the 2017-18, 2018-19 sports seasons. It has, I think, been the first time I've done it in Louisiana, not the first time I've done it in my career. I thought it went relatively smooth. We appreciated the fierce candor with schools and principals and those in those communities, working through the process, following what is in our guidelines in regards to how those districts are set up, using GPS systems and any technologies that we have available to us to try to ensure that we try to do what we can to keep the students of our state association member schools in their seats as long as we can for academic purposes and eliminate some travel. However, we also have schools that there are traditional rivalries that don't necessarily leave those students in those seats as long, but that's a principal's decision and a district and a parish decision more than it is one of the LHSAA. All that said, we have a final plan that is out now, and it has one last appeal process for the schools that feel as though they want to move and or not like where we placed after our last meeting we had a week ago at Lod Cook on the campus of LSU, and that will be heard by our LHSAA Executive Committee on the 14th, the afternoon of the 14th of December, which is the second day of the two-day LHSAA Executive Committee meeting. So we're in the process of getting things lined up for that as well. We have everything prepared for the Dome the next 2 weekends. As Ken say, buckle up, start early, stay late. That's the plan. That's what we do. And as I speak today, we're moving into the Dome, literally moving into the Dome, and we'll be getting things set up so we can start the practice sessions on Thursday with the team photographs, which is a tradition. We do all of that as well with our photo company, which is new to us, is Romaguer Picture Studios. Have come on board with us in a nice contract, and they've done some incredible work to this point as a new photographer for the LHSAA in the recent fall sports that we've completed to date. So we're moving forward, and it looks positive right now, and we're ready to go, and I think the coaches are ready. We met with Coach Monaco and other coaches this past Saturday at the LHSAA temporary buildings there in Baton Rouge. Got all the stuff squared away for them for the preparation of coming into the Dome, and we're looking forward to some good football. So for the coaches and the fans and the officials and everybody involved, best of luck to all of you. I see some officials in the room as well. Best of luck to all of you, and we look forward to having another successful event. I don't know if we have a questions and answer piece. Yes, do we? Anybody have it? This lady could not wait to get her hand up. I'm afraid what she's going to ask me.
I am from Georgia, so I did not grow up in Louisiana, but I have been a supporter of high school athletics for a long time in the state. And I sit here and I listen each week to coaches talking about the select and the non-select. And to me, it looks like that it has been diluted as far as competition is concerned. And I was wondering if there's anything in the plans to reunite at any time in the near future for a truly state champ.
That's a good question, and you probably know I get that a lot. As I stood here a year ago, ma'am, we had a plan in place that I thought would have assisted us in possibly bringing that particular format back together. But if you recall, again, as I mentioned, some of the roller coasters that we've had, there was a special meeting held on my behalf in June, and I think there was some direction, or maybe some misdirection on what my charge was when I was hired and what I was to try to accomplish. That said, I think the vote in June proved that what I was attempting to do and maybe what was done, depending on which side of the fence you are on the select or non-select, is when we move forward and continue to move forward with continuing splitting boys and girls basketball, baseball, and softball. Any and all information that I provided to the executive committee and the membership to vote was all data-driven, and it was also with research in regards to what would or would not transpire if we continue to split the organization. And the vote was of which we are now in the position we are, where we have select and non-select. My charge, ma'am, is to continue to move forward with what was been approved and try to do the best I can as executive director, as I mentioned earlier in this address today, to ensure that the experience is still a positive one for everybody involved. And depending upon the critics of the format, those individuals, again, have been very clear to me on what they felt we should have done. And there are also those who are applauding what we have done and feel as though possibly that we should continue that split in the thread of the organization. But what I can tell you, ma'am, that is not public knowledge until today, is the deadline was November 15th for any member school association principal to submit a proposal to the LHSAA to be taken to not only the executive committee, but also to the general business meeting, which we hold in the last weekend, that last Friday in January, to split the state any further in the sports in which they have not been split at this point, select and non-select. And as of that deadline, there was no proposal submitted to the LHSAA to do so. There's one more opportunity for that, and that would be if it's brought forward by an LHSAA executive committee member. And that person could propose, or persons could propose, to split in other sports that are remaining that have not been split at this particular juncture. And then at that point, that would be a vote of the 25 seated members of the executive committee on that day, which would be, I want to say either the 13th or the 14th. I haven't seen the finalized portion of that agenda. And that could very well move forward and be running to the floor of the General Assembly at the general business meeting that Friday, last Friday of January. Did I answer your question?
Raise your hand, we'll get the microphone to you.
Back here, sir. Yes, sir.
What was the change to counting the 8th graders this year? Isn't there a change in counting the 8th graders?
There wasn't, and I've had that question asked a few times too. There wasn't necessarily a change. When you had the 7th and 8th graders, the perception was the schools were counting them twice. And you were accounting for those students that you had that were moving forward, but we know that that number necessarily wouldn't be the same. So what we did is we deleted those numbers out and made it easier for the principals that were submitting those, if they had those 8th graders, to account for the number in which they were anticipating, and then we can always adjust those. As of today and the most recently, as you know, we just went through reclassification, the numbers was the first piece of that process. And we adjusted the numbers to assist those schools, because I think we only had less than a half a dozen schools, if that many, that the number of 8th graders included would actually change them in the classification in which they were going to be originally assigned. How did I do? Did I answer your question?
I think so.
Okay. Well, that's the way I learned it. That's the way I learned. You know how it was. And there's some people that like to not have to count the 7th and 8th graders at all and just do 9 through 12. But we also know that we have some athletes in those running sports that have been winning state championships or competing for state championships and being in that top 3 or 4 flight since the 7th grade. Yes, sir.
Hi. Okay, it looks like we're pretty much stuck for right now with the select and non-select breakdown. But when you look at the football playoffs that have occurred with 32 teams, it is so watered down, these last the teams that are making it, let's say from 24 to 32. Some of them are actually winless. It just seems pointless and very costly for those teams to play, especially since they got to go on the road. So is there any thought about reducing the number of the size of the brackets to like 20 or 24, something that would be more competitive?
Yes, sir. There has been some thought and conversation about that. Presently, the model gives us a 32 team. That would be something that would have to come out of recommendation for this. There are a couple of proposals that I see to this point that may address that. That met the deadline by the 15th. And I mentioned earlier the critics. I have heard in the last 16 days of the 0-10 schools that are qualifying for playoffs, schools with less than a 300 winning percentage, having to, over 50% of our schools having to run a running clock in the second half of these particular postseason, if you will, games. And we also are the only state in the United States that has a form that you can fill out and send in to us that you don't want to play anymore, that you don't want to participate in the postseason. And when we receive that form, we take that and we have to readjust the power rankings, because when that school drops out, then you have to go, I don't even want to get into the power ranking 101, but the power rankings then adjust not only that school, their opponent, but also the opponents of those schools that they participated against. So we do know that on the select side, that even if in some situations we moved it to a 20, 24, or even a 16-team bracket, we still have some buys. We have situations, we have individuals who have buys to the semifinals in certain sports. So yes, sir, that data was all produced and has been submitted and is out there. It's public knowledge. But as of today, there's no intent to change that today.
In fact, Cohen opted out of the playoffs this year. They had to win this team.
And Cohen opted out. Yes, that is correct. We had some that, I think we had 13 schools that submitted paperwork to opt out of the playoffs this year.
Raise your hand and what else? And then also the potential to reduce the number of brackets in the playoffs in terms of classification. Is there any talk about that?
There is talk about that. In fact, we have a couple of proposals that have been submitted to us, which will go to the executive committee actually tomorrow. We'll see them for the first time, and then and working under transparency and making sure that we have full communication with our member schools. I will get those out at the beginning of next week, so everybody has a copy of that so they can see. But we have two proposals that would reduce those brackets, as well as removing some divisions and classifications for future playoffs. So it would reduce those.
Anyone else?
Ken, thank you again, and thanks everybody. Appreciate it.